Would you like a room? I'm so sorry. I probably shouldn't scare people like that.
Some of the people who have been following this channel for a very long time now might be asking a rather important question right now. Didn't I already review this show? Like, back in 2013? And the answer is no, I have never reviewed the Gregory Horror Show. You see, I thought I did. I really thought I did. But after 2013, some of my most popular requests were to review anime. Not a specific anime, just anime in general. It was one of the most common questions that I got. Why don't you review anime? So it's absolutely impossible for me to have reviewed Gregory Horror Show in the first place. So let's make a review. If you don't know, Gregory Horror Show is an anime that only aired in Japan and Europe, and it rose to a cult status because of how strange and unusual it was. For starters, it's CGI, which is rare in anime even to this day. Never mind 1999 when this started airing. Even stranger than that, it's a first-person series. For the first 2 seasons at least. Gregory Horror Show had 4 seasons, well, 3.5 really. The first 2 seasons, The Nightmare Begins and The Second Guest, are almost entirely from the first-person perspective of the main character during their stay at a haunted hotel named Gregory House. Yes. No. The first season follows a man, and the second season follows a woman through their stay, each of them meeting a strange new character in almost every single episode, and having their sanity tested by some of the more malicious ones. The third season follows the host of the hotel, Gregory, as he takes the last train, and once again meets a bunch of strange and interesting characters, some of them new and some of them old. The final half season, known as The Bloody Cart, follows one of these characters, Catherine, as she works in a hospital. Getting all jokes and whatever out of the way, I did initially review this in 2013. It was one of my laser reviews. I want this review to be more than me just saying, here's a thing, go watch it. That would be stupid. So I guess the best thing I could do is describe the show while giving away as little as possible. Each episode has the protagonist meet a new resident of the house, or revisit an old one, get tormented by them, and a lesson is learned. Think friendship is magic, except straight from hell. Gregory Horror Show is an obscure cult classic. There is a good chance that for many of my viewers, this video or the other one is their first exposure to the series, so I think that it's my duty to be thorough, which is why I decided to review this show again. We're going to go a lot more in depth this time than we did before, which should be easy because every single episode of the show is between 2 and 5 minutes. It's a series of shorts back then, and I couldn't be bothered to talk about all of it. 2013 me is, something, isn't he? So that's what we're going to do this time around. Seasons 1 and 2 are largely similar, so what I say about one of them generally applies to the other. The Last Train is also quite similar, but it's a bigger break from the formula. It no longer has the first-person perspective, and it focuses a lot more on the humor than the horror. The last season is very love it or very hate it. If you like Catherine, you will like the 4th season. There is a huge chance that you will not like Catherine, and I highly recommend not watching the 4th season. Speaking of Catherine...
So, do you see this great, big, lovely needle? I know it looks shiny, but it's really very dull, and I'm going to pierce it into your red, juicy vein.
I want to stress that the series is for adults. I've heard some places that put Gregory Horror Show in their kids section, like I think Netflix did at one point. This series isn't Akira or Grave of the Fireflies, but it is no stranger to blood and violence and adult themes. And I mean that in all of the ways. For starters, one episode literally has a character reading a porno magazine, mentioned as such. But I also meant grown up in the adult sense. The main characters in the first 2 seasons are adults with adult problems and adult lives. It's fitting that the series looks like a PS1 cutscene because it actually has a lot of resemblance to the Silent Hill franchise. While Gregory Horror Show has occasional bouts of gore and a jump scare every once in a while, the horror you tend to get from the series comes from psychological horror. And I guess we should talk about the graphics to start out with. CGI graphics from the late 90s and early 2000s tend to age particularly poorly. And I think that the creator Naomi Iwata knew that, so this show went for a very unique art style, at least for the time. The creator used the same style for his next show, Piccola, which is a very bright and colorful children's cartoon. But today, this style is not too far off from, well, Minecraft animations, or voxel animation if you want to get technical. It's a style that became really popular in the 2010s, even with things other than Minecraft animations, because it does age pretty well, and you don't need to have a massive budget or a lot of computing power to make it look decent. Compare this to, I don't know, Jimmy Neutron, which came out later, but it looks a lot older. If I asked you when Gregory Horror Show came out, you'd probably have a hard time placing it if I didn't already tell you. And you'd think something like this would numb the horror aspect of the show, but no, I actually think that the graphics heighten it. Maybe it's because I grew up in the PS1 early polygon era, but early polygonal video games to me are one of the more frightening aesthetics out there. As games got a lot more photorealistic, they didn't draw on the horror of earlier games like Silent Hill, Resident Evil, LSD Dream Emulator, and so on. It's probably just an opinion thing, but I know I'm not the only one who has it. What helps heighten the horror even more so, though, is the first-person perspective. This, to me, is what makes Gregory Horror Show stand out.
Give the young thing a hug. I'm certain it would make her feel better.
My
I have never seen this in any other show. At least for not like more than a brief clip or whatever. The first 2 seasons are almost entirely in the first person perspective, which allows you to get a close-up and intimate view of the strange characters in the hotel. It heightens the horror because Hell Chef or the Lost Doll isn't looking at some random character. They're able to look and try to intimidate you directly, the audience member. And because the show is entirely in first person, it never feels out of place. Gregory's fourth wall breaks fit in and flow really well because of this.
But now, don't you worry about it. When it comes down to it, everyone loves themselves above all. The truth hurts, doesn't it?
It was an absolutely genius move all around. There might be a concern about the camera movements being too nauseating, but the show only rarely gets into actual motion. I wouldn't call the camera stationary, but most episodes take place largely in one room, or in the hallway during one conversation. And because this is a series of shorts and not full episodes, it's not something you even notice until you try breaking it apart. It's interesting as well because the point of view character is, well, a character, and it's not like a video game where you're in control. You're watching from the point of view of the first and second guests, but you can't make them do anything. You think that this might make a disconnect between the viewer and the show, but they actually did this in a really smart way, because there are differences between the first and second guest. As I said before, the first guest is a man and the second guest is a woman. But this is more than just a superficial difference. They have entirely different personalities. The first guest is much more passive. He gets pushed around by the hotel and the people who live there, only getting active as the series goes on. The second guest is active from the start, actually fighting back against many of the things that happen, albeit to varying success. She's a smoker and she also drinks. Details that we don't get about the first guest's life. The second guest has a much more realized personality, despite being the only one who doesn't actually have a name. From the outset, it might seem like seasons 1 and 2 are interchangeable because you can watch them in any order, but season 1 is more of a self-insert type of character. Because he is so passive, it allows you to better make the connection as a passive observer. While the second season builds on top of that, letting you make a connection with someone who is much more established. The series drops the first-person perspective more or less when it decides to go towards comedy. Not that seasons 3 and 4 are devoid of horror or horror elements. Season 1 and 2 are horror with comedic elements. Season 3 is a comedy with horror elements. Season 4 is stupid with uncomedic elements. However, to say that each season has a different focus is inaccurate. Every single season except the 4th is focused on theme, which is very unusual for an animated series. I mean, a lot of other series do have overarching themes, but chances are when you think of something like Ed, Edd n Eddy, the word friendship probably isn't the first thing you think of. And with Courage, love probably isn't the first word you think of either. Theme is integral to Gregory Horror Show, to the point where most characters that the protagonist meets are sparked by it. The first season is about escape or escapism. Beyond literally trying to escape the hotel, we have episodes about a relay machine or a roller coaster. And other forms of escapism do often crop up.
You know, I want to get out of this place too, but I can't. In this body. To tell you the truth, I've been feeling a bit stiff. I'm just not what I used to be, so I've got no choice but to sit here and drink my cares away.
The second season is about regret. While season 1 had a lot more buried into the symbolism, like the protagonist, season 2 is a lot more blatant. Depending on who you are, this is either a pro or a con. We learn about the first guest's past towards the end, only getting hints about his life before the hotel in bits and pieces beforehand. The second guest has specific past moments and memories without any subtext or irony, just blatantly spelled out. Even though the third season is quite different, it still revolves around this idea about theme. This time, the theme is ambition. You could consider the fourth season's theme love, but for that, you'd have to consider the fourth season existing at all, which I rather not do. I know that I'm being really harsh on season 4. To be as honest as I can, it's not terrible. It's just Catherine's gimmick works for an episode or two. She is an extremely off-putting character and is not someone designed to be the main character of 12 separate episodes. I have a feeling the bloody cart was made because she was popular, because horror fans apparently have this thing for creepy nurses that I will never ever get. Don't get me wrong, I get the nurse thing. I don't get the creepy nurse thing. Also, Catherine had a purpose in the first 2 seasons. Everything had a purpose in the first 3 seasons. Season 4 feels very arbitrary. It's almost all in on the comedy, with a shtick that I don't find very funny. But to go into why, I'll have to go into some spoiler territory. And yeah, Gregory Horror Show is one of those series. You'll get the best enjoyment out of it if you watch it with no more knowledge than what I've given you so far. However, in order to go into the best review I can and give the most appreciation for this show, I do need to go in deeper and go into spoiler territory. The first 3 seasons will only take you an hour to watch through each, and last time I checked, they are still on YouTube. So consider this a spoiler warning, I guess. In the first 3 seasons, the protagonist's entire journey is painted by their inner demons and once again their overarching theme. And we'll be going through them one at a time, going most deeply into the first one to at least keep some things unspoiled. The first guest, who has come to be known as Hanawa Salaryman, feels trapped in his daily grind. To him, his life is the same thing every single day, something that grinds and bores at his soul, to the point where he doesn't have much of an identity anymore besides work.
A mirror reflects substance. You should be able to figure it out now. It means that you are really nothing.
Your body is here, isn't it? Yet you have no substance. See? See?
One character he meets is TV Fish, who goes on showing Hanawa his memories. Unfortunately, the reception is fuzzy. According to Gregory, his memories are fading away. However, this is an episode that gets a lot different on rewatch. Listen to what TV Fish's memories actually are.
How was your day? Do you want some dinner? Or would you rather take a nice hot bath?
Daddy! It's me! Daddy, did you forget me? Daddy, try to remember! Daddy!
When Hanawa actually gets back to reality, that's not what we hear. It's more mundane at best, and it quickly devolves into nagging.
Dear, you're gonna be late for work.
Forgetting things.
Dear, you're gonna be late for work.
Grades have been just
Dear,
this
I
way.
think you need to have a
Never
talk
did
with
it.
our son.
I think you need to have a talk with our son.
Are you listening to
He's
me?
always forgetting
Grades have
things.
been just
Just
awful
Dear,
lately.
you're
You're
gonna
gonna be late for work.
At this rate,
He'll never get into a good college. Are you
Son.
listening to me?
The less than ideal family. Getting back to reality didn't help get Hanawa's memories back, because Gregory House wasn't taking those memories. Those were already fading memories by the time that Hanawa came to Gregory House. It's doing the same thing day in and day out until you don't remember why you're doing it. Almost every single character can be put in the context of the kind of person that Hanawa is, and his inner desires that the house is manifesting and perverting. Catherine is a clear example of that. On the first watch, getting blood drawn by a huge ass needle is a common phobia. However, Catherine also takes some very sexual pleasure in it. It's only barely hidden beyond metaphor. They're not hiding anything. Hanawa wants some excitement in his life that he's just not getting. It might be that he's too scared and intimidated to let his desires be known.
I am Judgment Boy. Judgment! You're a businessman. Today you will sign a major contract that will change your life. But your girlfriend who you love has just been hit by a car. If you go to the hospital, you'll lose that contract. Now, which will you choose?
Every time he comes across Judgment Boy, he says one thing, the more nice answer, but every single time, Judgment Boy makes the other choice for him.
You say you choose to visit your girlfriend in the hospital. Is that so? Well, I say we should consult the balance of truth. Judgment now! You chose the contract, and in the meantime, your girlfriend dies alone in her hospital bed. It was your choice. You get to live with it.
However, the choices made are the ones that Hanawa society would expect for him, to at least appear socially normal. Hanawa Salaryman's name obviously isn't a coincidence. Japan as a whole has a very workaholic culture. and it is something that he would stick to, even if it meant that he missed out being with his dying girlfriend.
You must draw the instant this coin hits the ground. Are you willing to die because you can't find a reason to fight? Or will you draw your gun to survive? The decision is yours. My friend, it's time to decide.
When presented with drawing his gun in order to survive in Cactus Gunman's episode, he doesn't. He only survives because Cactus is the worst shot in the West.
Oh, I see.
Oops.
You can tie in just about every character into Hanawa's failure to act and his loss of identity. Just from what we can infer, he seems to have lost it long ago. After all, having a job and a family and constantly running the rat race, that's what society wants. Kinda like the messages that are played on a TV. It's not necessarily what Hanawa wants.
Hey there, mister. Why are you sleeping? Are you feeling okay? I've got a really bad headache myself. Maybe I caught a cold or something.
Mummy Dog suffers from severe splitting headaches, but he doesn't notice the axe wedged in his head. Hanawa's problems might be simple and obvious, but he just can't see it, and goes to look for other solutions to the problem. And considering Mummy Papa has the exact same condition, it could be representative of generational trauma.
My daddy is always complaining that his head hurts too. I guess I must have inherited the headaches from him. Hey, mister, I brought my daddy.
I know how you're feeling. I just can't seem to shake this splitting headache.
Generations and generations of Hanawa salaryman having the exact same problems and ignoring the obvious all around. Lost Doll can add to this interpretation.
She's such a lonely child. Her only friend was her doll. Then one day her world came crashing down. Her heartless parents threw her little doll away.
Have you seen my dolly?
Such a deep connection. Cruelly severed.
Her parents threw away her doll that she seeks endlessly for, and yet she is the doll.
It seems the poor girl has a problem with intimacy. She doesn't realize that she herself is the doll for which she's searching.
Perhaps Hanawa's parents metaphorically threw away the person that he is, leading to an internal divide. One very hurt, looking for what he lost and can't seem to find anywhere. And the other one, explosive, angry, maniacal, the one that was buried deep down, but could tend to come out at very inconvenient times. Every single character ties into Hanawa's themes. Also, I've been talking out my ass. Is any of this objectively true? I have no idea. Season 1 of Gregory Horror Show is very open to interpretation. And while I do say that I'm talking out of my ass, these are my interpretations of the show, but they're just that. My personal interpretations. Some things are clearly and plainly stated, and some things are quite obvious to infer, but there's also a lot of general weirdness that doesn't seem to amount to anything, like the Grim Reaper has the flag of Sweden on his head for no apparent reason. Neko Zombie also has the name of an infamous executioner on his shirt. Why is Clockmaster's year set to 1960? We learn later that Hanawa died in the 1970s apparently. Season 1 of Gregory Horror Show really is what you make of it. I like my interpretations because they build on the overall picture. But even if you don't want to go into all this interpretation, the show is engaging enough to keep you watching as Hanawa comes through all sorts of crazy events and creepy creatures. As I understand it, some people on the internet really like to theorize, and there's an infinite amount you can do with Season 1. Season 2, however, is less open to interpretation.
She used to date the groom.
I wonder how she feels having her ex-boyfriend marry one of her best friends.
So, you're saying your career is more important to you than I am? All right then, this relationship is over.
Our main character is bitter and jealous because her best friend married her ex-boyfriend. Her boyfriend became her ex because she was more focused on her career than on him. This is plainly stated in the text.
But I'm not ready for marriage.
So you're saying you choose your career over me?
You are 29 years old. Your former boyfriend has just married one of your best friends. Now, what are you going to do?
A chance meeting and then a happy wedding! Your fantasy is taking shape. Let's see.
Oh, my darling.
A lot. And I can see that some people might criticize season 2 for this. So, the dilemma of a woman picking between family life and work life, it's like the most cliche female-focused story out there, and it's generally the first thing that male writers think of when they think of writing a female character. It's a well-worn path. However, I do want to give some leniency here. This was like in the year 2000 when these stories were a lot more untapped. I'm sure that this was somewhat cliche even at the time, but less so than it would be today. Also, as stated, the second guest is a lot more developed as a character. She's a lot more active, despite the cliche origins. She fucking assaults Gregory with a weapon.
Lord of the Lost World, heed my command!
I take it you're pretty angry about this.
Hanawa didn't do that. Still, season 2 is probably aged the weirdest of all the seasons.
It's terribly sad, but I'm afraid even beautiful roses must be thrown in the trash once they grow old. That rose doesn't want to be touched. Well, some roses are like that. They just won't let anyone get close to them. Ah, what a silly idea. There's no way that an old rat like me can understand how a rose feels. But one thing's for sure, anyone who wants to touch that bloom is going to get hurt. Of course, I'm talking about the rose, my dear.
Some of the characters have a sexist attitude. It's not justified in the series, obviously. Gregory House is literally purgatory. It's not supposed to be a pleasant place. But I can imagine some moments and episodes in season 2 being uncomfortable for some people, especially because of the first-person perspective. I can also imagine it being a little bit annoying too. You will be hearing about the second guest's most painful memory again and again. To some, this might be repetitive and annoying, but even without going into navel-gazing, I could see that this repetition does serve a higher narrative purpose. Hanawa's adventure was buried in metaphors, because he wanted an easy solution out of his soul-consuming life. More than anything, the second guest wants to forget about her life, and Gregory House will not let her. While this season is definitely much more blatant with the backstory, there is also still room for interpretation if you want to go that way.
What are you doing, James?
I'm the camera guy.
That's the camera used for broadcasting on TV Fish. That's not a toy.
No way. Don't you mess with my freedom of speech, Grandpa.
In this season, we are introduced to Gregory's grandson, James. When you get over the realization that the mouse actually fucked someone, you might come to realize that James is a bit of a shit. He is the epitome of a stuck-up brat, always causing trouble.
Lady, I really gotta pee.
Better make it quick.
Gotta pee. Lady, wait for me here. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. I promise.
Huh? Where'd that lady go?
She said she wants to walk home. I'm getting sleepy.
And yes, once again, I can see people finding this annoying. In my personal view, these episodes aren't long enough to get annoying, but we all do have our own tolerance. And he causes just as much hell to Gregory as he does to the second guest, so that makes up for a lot of it.
Grandpa!
James, don't come any closer!
But I want to play too! Okay?
James!
Here I come! Swinging. This is so much fun.
Stop it, James! This rope is getting tighter!
It also helps that you can see James as very symbolic, representing the fears of a family or having kids ruining your life, something that's likely to have crossed the second guest's mind. Once again, it's all up to interpretation. There's no backstory manual to the series, but I'm not making the biggest stretches in the world. The second guest is a character who is more focused on career than family, and is in the midst of regret towards that. Feelings like family and the best and the worst that can result in are bound to crop up in an arc like this. It's a series very much like The Beginner's Guide or Synecdoche, New York. What's there on the surface is quite good, if a little weird and hard to understand at times. But the more that you think about it and the more you put together, the more you tend to enjoy it. If Gregory Horror Show was more popular, fans would probably be debating the meanings of every single character. Does Hell's Chef represent an abusive parent? Maybe a fear of criticism, maybe a fear of speaking out. It really is up to you. The third season is also heavily about theme, but it's not tied together by a specific character.
Eternity, show me my reflection. I'm ready to see what I have to. My conscience is no longer binding me, for I myself am the conscience. I am none other than ambition itself. I am the water rat without a body, running along the circuit of souls. All will flow as all is meant to.
Once again, the theme is ambition, and this time it's blatantly stated, so there's no need to interpret there. And the characters we meet along the way all have something to do with ambition. It does give a neat little analysis as to how our ambitions can trap us.
Yeah, someone's got to pay the bills. Kids are in college, the wife's rediscovering herself, so what are you gonna do? See those lights?
Thank you for riding with us today.
My family's waiting for me there. Oh? I've been taking this last train home ever since I can remember. Old habits die hard. End of the line for me.
The first episode we see Hanawa, whose ambitions have gotten trapped in his repeating dull life, which gets him sent to Gregory House in the first place. The chicken man that we see has the ambitions for the,
They have a place for me to stay and everything, and I can eat as much as I want. It's the job I've always dreamed of. Well, the truth is, I don't really have to do anything. Apparently, my job is just to keep on eating.
Absolutely perfect and easy life, which will lead to his death and destruction. It's little things like that. The season as a whole has less commentary, if that's the appropriate word, at least into the end. It's much more episodic than the first two seasons. However, from just a casually watching perspective, season 3 is my favorite. It's just funny, really. Not that the other seasons don't have humorous moments, but season 3 goes almost all in for the comedy perspective. One episode has this pig feeling daring enough to insult Hell's Chef.
Where's the head chef?
What's wrong?
Are you mocking me? Get me some decent meat at once! How dare you serve me this piece of crap? I want you to serve me the most tender meat you have available.
Very well.
And the episode ends with Gregory getting pork for his dinner. Bits of fucked up humor like that. Also, unlike Straight Outta Nowhere, it manages to make an old man rapping actually funny, believe it or not.
La la, when the sun covers the... Go away! Get off me!
Yo, you gotta wake up. You're a whack MC who ain't worth your makeup. Yo, you better think fast before those crows decide to eat you for breakfast. Yeah, you're gonna get chomped on, so take that back to Compton.
Which is an accomplishment that no other series in history has. However, I'm more hesitant to spoil jokes than I am a plot, so that's as far as I'll go on Season 3. However, for an even trade, I'll give you Season 4's one and only joke. Catherine wants love in her life. She expresses that by draining people of blood. That is all 12 episodes of Season 4. These days, Gregory Horror Show is known more for its game than its anime. Like the show, it was only released in Japan and Europe, specifically the UK, I think. However, it's known as a really good licensed game, even making it in the 1001 Video Games You Must Play Before You Die book, for what it's worth. That book is another discussion. Please don't get me started on that book. Trust me, we'll be here all day. The game was made by Capcom, and they definitely know how to make a good survival horror game. And a good licensed game, too. It's how most people got into the series, myself included, even though I've never been able to play it. Thank God for Let's Players. As for the series itself, I highly recommend it, the first 3 seasons at least. Even if you don't like the show, you're basically out only a few hours, so it's worth a shot if it seems remotely interesting to you. And finally, this is Mr. Enter saying, stop telling me to start reviewing anime. Please. I don't want to have to make this review a third time.